Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of the Red Sofa Conversations. This episode is all about parenting, which I'm super excited about, and I know quite a lot of people have been telling me they're really excited to watch this too. So, with me on the Red Sofa today is my friend of 26 years. This is James. James is an actor and director, but James is the person who I probably met first of all when I moved into halls, because James lived below me and we used to hang out together, and I was reminding him just now about all the parties we used to have, and it was great fun. And so I'm really excited to do this episode because, as I've said before, conversation for me is the gateway to connection. And that's why I really like to delve into topics that connect us all as humans, and they transcend societal barriers like age and race and sex and culture and background. And parenting is a really huge topic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, full disclosure straight up, I am not a parent. James is a parent of teenagers.
Two boys, a teenager, a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. Yeah.
Great, and so a soon-to-be teenager.
Yeah.
And although I'm not a parent, I have been thinking about the kind of parent that I want to be since age 15.
That's
and
good.
Yeah.
That's great.
I had a situation with my young cousin, and I reacted in a way that I didn't feel was my best self, and I was really shocked. And it made me realize that unconsciously there were these things in me that I had never thought about. And at that moment, I apologized to him, and I made a vow to myself that I was going to think consciously about the kind of parent that I wanted to be. And I'm godmother to 4 children. I became a godmother at age 19.
4?
Yeah. So I was a godmother when we met.
That's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
4.
And
that's fantastic.
and then I'm an auntie to loads.
Yeah,
and
great.
also for the ones that I'm not formally, I haven't got a formal relationship, I sort of look at them as my surrogate children anyway. So it's a really important topic, because I think that how we raise our children, and I think children are raised by more than just parents.
Absolutely. There's carers and there's lots. There's
and
a big
aunties
group
and
around
uncles
them.
and friends and other family members. And I think it's really important that we collectively take an interest in raising our children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's why we're doing this episode. So, parenting. I feel like it's an interesting perspective to discuss it now, like being where we are, because when we were children, our parents were just parents. Like, we just saw them as our parents, and we didn't even, well, I certainly didn't see them as individuals.
Yeah.
And so now that a lot of my friends are parents, I feel like I'm sort of peeking behind the curtain, so to speak,
Sure,
and getting to sort of hear about things that I would never have heard about as a child. And so one of the first things I want to ask you is, how much did you think before becoming a parent of what that would be like? And did you kind of prepare? And can you ever really prepare, or you can do as much as you can by reading and thinking and formulating your opinions, but when your children come, you have to sort of take them, take them as they are and figure out stuff along the way?
Yeah, I guess you can't really fully prepare, because it's a huge change, and like you say, there's someone there who's very different than you, and you kind of have to hear them and see them for who they are. You can show them what you think is right and wrong, but to a certain degree you can't really force that on them. So yeah, it is, and it creates a big change in you. As a result, it means that you have to examine who you are a lot more, and understand how you feel about things, so that you can hopefully understand how they feel about things. I don't know if I was at all ready to be a parent when I became a parent. I was quite young. I was about 29, and I was having a pretty good time of life and pretty busy. Yeah. So I think, I like yourself, I always wanted to be a parent. Like when I was younger, I thought about it.
Yeah.
I used to think when I was a kid, one of the things I used to think when I was a kid was like, I think one of the classic things that kids think is, I'd never be like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Because the
like
way...
your mum or dad do something and you go, I'd never do that as a parent. And the reality is you sort of forget all that when you become a parent, and you probably do quite a lot of it.
Because I think that, God, like the first thing that you said has literally just opened up everything I wanted to talk about, so thank you. So I think that I was telling you about Dr. Shefali. So she's a huge influence for me about the kind of parent that I want to be. And she's written a few books, but the most well-known ones that were featured on Oprah were The Conscious Parent and The Awakened Family. And there are a couple of things that she talks about that really hit home. One is that when we become parents and when we have children in our lives that we're interacting with, children trigger everything in us. And so it's all the things that we have experienced and we have learnt and we have said, oh, I'm never going to do that. But we have to sort of start examining our reactivity to what our children bring up in us, and actually acknowledge that there is reactivity, and that means there is imprinting and patterning that we may not have even known was there in the first place, because until you're in that situation, you can think you'll be, you know, a particular way, and then the child comes along and you suddenly revert into all these modes of
amazing how they'll just
behaviour.
press your buttons and you'll be like, I didn't even know that button was there to be pressed, and then suddenly it gets pressed and you're like, wow.
That's exactly what she says. She says that when you're conscious, because a lot of us end up doing things, and I guess possibly if you're not somebody that is self-reflective and starts to examine, oh, why am I feeling like that? And then starts to realise, oh, I'm feeling like that because this is what I'm associating, or this is the story I'm telling myself, then, you know, you can kind of end up in a dynamic, you know, with parenting, and I guess parenting with your partner too, if you happen to be parenting with your partner, where you're kind of like playing out these roles that you never even thought were in you, and these patterns that you never even thought that you would do. So that's one of the things that she says. And
but that's if you can become aware of that, that's useful, and that can help you grow as a person. And I think so there's all those things that kind of get passed on, and within that there will be a lot of really good stuff. So that's fantastic. You've already got a lot of good stuff. So then it's just trying to become aware of the moments where the stuff that isn't maybe what you want to hand on. And I think what did you say? One of the things you were saying earlier, like the ability to know that you've made a mistake and say sorry about something, is kind of quite a big step really as a parent, because it's quite easy to think you're the sort of be all and end all, and you have all the authority, but inevitably you will over chastise, or you will get angry, or you will scold, or you know, you will do things that maybe aren't healthy. You kind of need to
being your best self?
No,
because they're coming from a place of reactivity
of anger and
than response, you know, measured, considered response.
And so if those things happen, well, you know, that's life. They've happened, and I think you just have to kind of own up to it. And it's important that you kind of tell yourself that you're doing the best that you can, and not get down and beat yourself up and go, oh my God, I've ruined my child. You know, there's sort of like a running joke amongst all the parents, which is like, well, you know, that'll be good for therapy when they're older, you know.
But also, there's something that's been going through my head, and I don't know whether it's from a film. I think it's from a film or TV show, where somebody was saying, I swore to myself I would never do the things that I would never make the mistakes that my parent made, and so now I've just made different ones. Do you recognise? I've been asking everybody, like, what film is this from?
I don't know what film that is from. Okay. It sounds like it's sort of a line from Parenthood or something, which is quite
that's
a good
what I thought. Well, look,
parenting.
guys, if you figure out, please put me out of my misery and post it in the comments. What film is this from? That's really interesting what you said about being able to apologise. And I think that feeds into, it's funny because I was asking one of my friends, Cassie, who lives in the West Coast. She lives in California.
Right.
And she, you guys should follow her on Instagram if you're interested, because she works with kids and she speaks to kids a lot, and she posts a lot of really interesting thoughts. And one of the things, it's at Listen Within to Win on Instagram. But one of the things that she was saying was exactly that, you know, when you view yourself as a parent with your child, do you view it as I'm the parent and what I say goes, or do you view it as, well, actually they are little humans and I want to learn from them, and then that actually means that if I've done something that I don't feel was the right way to react, I'm going to go to them and apologise.
Well, yeah, and it's got to be a bit of both, because they don't know the boundaries, so you've got to go, you can't run into that road, you will die. Yeah. And you've got to say, you can't hit that child, that is wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they're doing stuff, you've got to have, you're there as the moral compass, or the you know, you've got the bigger picture.
The framework, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like
You can say, okay, look, I've seen this a bunch of times, and I can tell you that probably shoving that ice cream in that child's face is not going to pan out well for you in the long run. So just
or
don't
it could
do
be
it
an
again.
important learning of this is what happens when you shove an ice cream.
Yeah, you'll find out.
You'll find out that somebody will shove an ice cream back.
Probably, yeah. There's quite a funny little running joke that I've got with my youngest at the moment, Albert, about how I'm such a bad dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's actually quite a relief. We've introduced it, and he'll just be like, "Oh, more bad parenting than Dad," you know. And
do you want to share any examples? I think that's such a healthy relationship to have.
I can't think of any specifics right now, but it's one of those things that sort of comes up every now and again. He'll just be like, "That's not great parenting, Dad, is it?" Like, he's like, because he's 11 now, so he's old enough to sort of frame it. Now, I know that part of him is using that as well to sometimes take a little bit of advantage of me. But I think also there's I think he recognises, and we both recognise, that sometimes I haven't got it right. And I will say that, and I'll just be like, look, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, so this came up last night. We were chatting in bed. And we were talking about Star Wars. And then he said, oh, do you remember when we went to see Attack of the Clones at the IMAX? And I said, oh yeah, I do remember that. You were very, very small, very young, and you got super scared because it was loud and it was big and a bit overwhelming. And he was like, yeah, but you kept wanting me to stay. And I said, yeah, I did. Yeah, I remember that now. And I was like, and I feel guilty about that, because I realised when you told me that you were scared, I should have just said straight away, sure, okay, let's go. But I didn't. I sort of tried to persuade you to stay. And he went, yeah. He said, I didn't like it. And I said, yeah, and I understand now, probably what you felt was, you felt that the film was more important to me than you. And he said, yeah, I did. I think I did feel that. And then he said to me, I feel really sad now. And
how long ago was
this? Was like 7 years ago. So
he was 4.
Yeah, long time ago. So I don't know if he was actually really feeling sad in that moment as a direct memory of it, or whether he was feeling sad because he was playing out the emotion of the story of it again. I'm not sure. But he said that, and I was like, well, that's okay. I understand. Of course you'd feel sad about that. And I'm really sorry I did that. And he just turned to me and went, more bad parenting, Dad. So he kind of forgave me.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I sort of felt like we had repaired this thing that had happened.
Yeah.
And it just sort of happened in the moment. And I guess that's sort of what you're trying to do, is do your best, because that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And then if you're making mistakes, try and sort of, it's tough owning up to not getting stuff right, but sort of own up to it, and then try and repair it as best as you can. And sometimes sometimes they won't want you to repair them, or won't want to listen. Mm-hmm. And it changes, they change from day to day. There'll be days where they want to talk and want to listen, and there's the days that they don't. I guess what you really want is you want to have an ongoing conversation with them.
Yeah.
So you feel like they do want to talk to you, and they do want to be close, and they do want to share things.
And people only do that, like, children are just little people, right?
Yeah.
So it's like people only do that when the other person creates the space and holds the space for that to happen.
Yeah,
it makes them feel safe.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And I feel like relationships are built in the cracks of time. They're not built out of the big things.
Okay.
And so, that moment where, you're putting him to bed and you're chatting, these are the things where kids will, if you've created that space, those are the times where they're just going to come out with something. It'll be a conversation.
It just sort of drops in and then it happens.
A conversation, and then that triggers a memory, and then it's like, and then he feels safe enough to be able to vocalize. And I think that what that tells me, and we haven't actually, I didn't know this example, and we never talked about this.
It just happened last night.
Yeah. But what that tells me is, it tells me a few things. It tells me that you have created that space with him, that he feels safe to be able to talk about how something made him feel. That if this happened 7 years ago, at 4, he wouldn't have had the language, or the sophistication of the language, to be able to understand that in that moment when I'm feeling this, I felt that you cared more about the film.
Yeah.
And
I only realised it last night as well.
I know, because like sometimes we sort of do things and we don't always realise the effect that we're having until somebody tells us.
Yeah.
And I think that's a human thing, and I think that if we're then open to receiving that information, not defensively and not with reactivity, but with curiosity and with oh my god, I didn't know that, and then you sit with that information, and if you're able to receive it in that way, then that means that you're able to process it without getting super defensive.
Yeah.
To then be able to go, I didn't realize I was wrong. And I think that children need to hear that.
Yeah, sure.
Because what that shows them is that, Simon Sinek says that children, we all worry about, what kids are picking up from social media and all of this, right? He said children learn 2 things from their parents: how to treat themselves and how to treat other people. Yeah. That's it. Right. So what you're showing him is that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to own up to mistakes, and then it's okay to ask, to say, I didn't mean it, and, to kind of ask for forgiveness. And that shows somebody how to conduct themselves in the future. Yeah. You're modelling for him a beautiful way of being human and connecting with people.
By being a bad dad.
I apologised to my niece. Last summer I had my nieces, so I got to be mummy for a month, which was utterly gorgeous.
Nice. For a whole month?
Yeah, for a whole month.
Wow.
So they lived with me.
Cool.
And I'm very proud of this fact that for performing arts school, we took 2 tubes, the overground, and walked 8 minutes, and I got all of us ready to be at performing arts school at 9:30.
Oh, let me tell you, like, a massive, massive part of parenting is getting out the door in the morning.
But
like, that
James,
is the
I
big...
can't get
I think that's the biggest
I can't
challenge.
get myself out of the door in the morning. And the fact that I did that with all 3 of us...
Maybe they help focus the mind.
I was efficient. I made packed lunches and showers and all of this. Anyway, so what happened is we were rushing to be on time. I think it was for the last or second to last day of summer camp. And one of them, they'd folded tissues and like they were prepping and whatever. And we were literally about the door, and then one of them said, "Oh, I need to go to the toilet." Yeah. And I went, "For fuck's sake."
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We gotta get out of this door.
I didn't even say it. I just went, "For fuck's sake."
Yeah.
And then that was my reactivity in the moment. And like milliseconds later, I thought to myself, you know what? We're going to a place where the toilets aren't great, and I'd rather that she's comfortable. And actually, if it makes us a little bit late, that's okay. And so I immediately went back and I said to her, you know, I'm so sorry. That was really not nice of me to say that. And I want you to be comfortable and everything. And I didn't react well. And I'm sorry, you know, will you forgive me? And she was like, sure, Auntie Lara.
Not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
Because this is the other thing. It's generally not a big deal.
But
For most kids, they kind of
I
move on
felt
pretty
it was
quick.
important to acknowledge that. God,
Yeah.
that was a really crappy reaction.
Yeah, it's really tough. I think like realizing that you don't have to be on time is a really healthy thing with children.
I think so.
You know,
Jay.
and it's not that you should aim for that.
No.
But I just like in the bigger picture of things to have a kind of a feeling of ease as you leave the house is a better place to be than the it's got to be right there on time. And if you find that you're always being late, then you just have to start examining that and just get ready earlier.
And prep stuff the night before.
I'll say all this, but as a family, we are quite famous for being late.
Well,
you know, generally, if we go down to see my folks, there's just a running joke. If I say I'll be there at 1, we'll be there at 1:30. It's just
1:30 is good.
Yeah, it's probably quite
I'm
good.
probably 1:30 without children. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about as part of the peeking behind the curtain, so to speak, is I never even thought about this concept that parenting, having to parent with your partner and becoming parents, can actually really significantly affect your relationship. And obviously I never thought about it as a child because I was a child in a scenario. But now hearing from a lot of my friends as parents, they, you know, a lot of them talk to me about the issues and the challenges and difficulties that come up with what we started off talking about, where we are all imprinted in different ways.
Yeah.
But you know, and our parenting styles. And so you've in the examples that we've kind of discussed, you've shown me that your parenting style is that you're not, you know, you're a mix between setting boundaries, but you're not sort of authoritarian enough to sort of not apologize for mistakes, and you're open to listening.
Yeah, sure.
And you're also you want to have that communication with your child, right? That open communication, which is only going to set you up, you know, with them better as they get older, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
And what happens if you have a situation with your co-parent where they parent in a completely different way? How does that kind of impact?
Well, like to unpack that. So, first up, what happens is when you have kids, you all move down the pecking order. Is the first thing that is kind of that's changes your life.
Okay, because you have people little humans you're responsible for. Yeah,
there's people that become more of a priority than you.
For both of you.
For both of you, but then within that also, I think what starts to happen, hopefully, is that, for example, I move down the pecking order in terms of, for me, it's more important what's happening to Amy and then the kids. I mean, a mate of mine one time was like, he said, he said, there's the kids, there's the wife, there's the dog, and then there's me. and you know, that's sort of quite flippant, but in a way, you do have to sort of put people first. It's not easy because at the same time, you've got to massively look after yourself. So that's a big change when pecking order changes, because before that, there's just the two of you, and you're a couple. And it's, I look after you, you look after me. This is my interest. This is what concerns me. Oh, I'll sort that out for you. Don't worry. And so then what happens is someone else comes in who you both have a concern for, and has a sort of tends to take the priority above each other.
Okay.
So you really have to try and maintain the connection with each other and helping each other. That can be really, really difficult. It can be, first up, really difficult for very, very pragmatic reasons, such as you're really fucking tired.
Yes.
So, you know, when you're tired...
You're tired, nothing works. It's
nothing.
Like everything that your zenness, your reactivity goes up.
Yeah.
You're just exhausted. I mean, when I'm tired, it's so difficult.
And it's so difficult it's so difficult to express yourself in a clear and kind fashion when you're tired. Okay. Because you want to be like the baby. You're like, give it to me.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, is not conducive to good relationships with other adults. So it can create quite a lot of tension and friction. So you just have to sort of try and take a step back every now and again if you can, and sort of check in and go, okay, look, you know, I didn't mean that, or I still care for you, or I understand, you know, all of that. But what can happen in that situation as well is that parenting style, or all the kind of information that is loaded into you as a person that you took on board when you were being parented, then suddenly plays out in a very raw version. And inevitably, your version isn't going to be exactly the same as their version.
Yeah.
So...
And you can have all the discussions beforehand of coming up with scenarios and everything.
Yeah.
And then when the actual scenario happens, because that's what's happened to some of my friends, where they had all these I mean, first of all, like, it's good to have these conversations, right?
Yeah, it is good. We didn't, because we got pregnant without planning it.
Right.
But in a way, that was great, because we just had to go for it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that it's great to have conversations, but having those conversations isn't a guarantee of somebody's... way of dealing with things.
Yeah, because you're all totally feeling different. Yeah. Because you can have a conversation with someone, and how you're dealing with it is a cerebral process.
It's a hypothetical.
Going, it's like, oh, of course I would behave like this. Of course I think. Of
course
like this.
I don't believe in shouting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But there's something entirely different when you haven't slept for 3 or 4 months, and you know, and you're strung out and whatever. Yeah. So it is. So to find a way to parent together is important. And again, I will definitely say I haven't been brilliant at it all the time. And I think what happened is I had to learn from that about being more patient with that other person, and giving them...
And listening.
Yeah, listening. And then also things like quite quickly... I think Amy and I both worked out that it's really important that there's one voice and not 2 voices.
Okay.
So if they've made a mistake, if the child's made a mistake, or you've got to tell them off for something, then let one person do it. I think early doors we were probably both trying to weigh in.
Because it's just 2 against 1 is a bit overwhelming?
It's just really unfair. It just becomes like bullying. Okay. For the child, if you imagine how the child must feel.
Yeah.
So... Okay, I made a mistake as a child.
I never thought about it for that reason. I thought about it in the, you know, it's good to have a unified voice.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to have a unified voice, but I guess...
But that's brilliant.
So how do you break it down? And I guess a way of breaking it down is to say, how does the child feel in this situation? So the child, if you know, the child's made a mistake and one parent's saying, well, look, you know, you shouldn't have done that. That's not on. Mm-hmm. And even if it's like, you've got to go to your room, I'm not allowing that sort of behaviour.
Yeah.
If it's just you and them, or say Amy and the child, then they can hear that, they can take that on board. They may not like it, whatever, but at least it feels like they have a way of responding to it and they can relate to it. If you've suddenly got 2 people on this one person, it's just going to feel like you're bullied. And I think that probably happens a lot in families. I mean, it's always about a shifting dynamic of like who's on whose side. Yeah. And you have to... if you can have a good sense of humour with it, it can be quite fun. There's a lot of banter, there's a lot of like, we're ganging up on you right now. Yeah. But if you all do it and you know you're doing it, great. But babies, like little children, don't know you're doing it, so it's not fair. So I think quite quickly, we found out that probably wasn't the best way of doing it. And we found out it was the best. We found out that one-on-one was better by not doing it, because she would be telling Sam off or something, and then I would either pile in like behind her, backing her up, or even worse, go, no, that's not right. You should do it like this.
Okay, and you're literally taking the questions out of my head, because what I was going to say is that's great, and I really agree with that. But what happens if you're watching your co-parent do something or say something that you then don't agree with?
Well, yes,
what do you do?
That's going to happen inevitably, unless you're kind of like born of a sort of extraordinary hive mind, you know, like it's just like inevitably that's going to happen. So and that is again about trying to be conscious and checking your emotion to a certain degree and understanding it, and parking stuff as full stop in life is really important, to be able to park stuff for a little bit and go, I'm not going to react right now, not going to jump in on the conversation right now, I'm going to wait till the right time. Listen, you know, like, I'm not always good at this. I get it wrong.
God, we all do. We all do. It's like part of being human.
Totally, yeah. But as if you can, and you know, I know there's lots of times I haven't, but my goal is, if there's something going on where the parenting is happening and I disagree with that point of view, then my goal is to try and not interrupt it in that moment and just because actually the fact is, sort of at the base level across the board, I know Amy comes from the right place.
Yeah.
So I know she loves the kids. I know she wants the best for them. I know that's her priority.
You're trusting in the trust that you have of her and the respect you have for her.
So ultimately, you have to trust in your partner. And then, you know, like, bring it up. What unfortunately does happen sometimes, and has happened to us a couple of times, is like where you don't in that moment agree with it, and then you try and change it. But the problem is then it's difficult for them to do your partner to change course. So then that becomes a conflict between the two of you. So the thing is, the child is left there and not knowing what's going on and really confused. It's like, I thought I was being naughty, but now suddenly someone else is being naughty, and then suddenly no one's getting along. What have I done?
I mean, what just occurred to me as I was sort of thinking of that scenario playing out is,
so just to finish, you need to try and sort it out later, if you can, and have a kind of adult conversation then.
Between the two of you, or later, between all of you?
Between the two of you, ideally, which is about, like, this is my moral position, or this is how I feel that should be done, or and then hopefully, if you do trust each other, you can go, okay. And then sometimes you're just going to go, well, I see it differently.
Yeah. So in that situation, because I was thinking that there aren't a lot of situations where there needs to be an immediacy in terms of conveying your point of view, right? Obviously, if it's like, can I go off and run on a train track right now?
Yeah.
And then you have to step in. But with a lot of things, it could be that you have the opportunity to come back to it and revisit. Even if the one parent has given their point of view and said, yes, you're allowed to go on a 5-day sleepover or whatever, you know, like...
Yeah, and the reality is you could come back and go, we've had a little think about it between us, and maybe you should...
And so maybe what I'm thinking is that, like, a healthy way to sort of do it would be if... And this comes to knowing your partner and you knowing each other really well, right? Which is like, there'll be some things where you kind of know them well enough, and especially if the kids are like, now your kids are 11 and 15, so you've been parents for a while, and patterns and things will come up. So you'll kind of know how the other person will feel. So one of you will feel totally comfortable with saying, yes, you can do that, because they'll know that you know, the other person won't object.
Yeah, sure.
But maybe in early days, or maybe when, you know, you're not actually sure, or maybe because of the significance of the thing itself, a good thing to do would be to, you know what, like, I need to discuss it with my, you know, with your dad, with your mum, right? To then be able to have that discussion, see where you both stand, and then come and present a unified front.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it that way, then you can still discuss in the discussion of it, if somebody else comes up with something where you haven't thought of the impact or the consequence. That's
course.
Totally fine to be able to do that, because all that shows is that, you know what, I've thought about it further, and actually I didn't realise this.
Yeah.
And therefore now we're saying no because of this reason. And I think I'm a big one for explaining, and I kind of explain things because I like somebody to know what's in my head and to maybe understand the reason behind something. And when my nieces were here, I explained a lot about
what you were...
About why I was not allowing X, Y, Z.
Yeah, okay.
And one of the things that I think, for me, one of the primary things that I would want to instill in them, in any child I'm responsible for, is self-responsibility.
Yeah.
And, you know, making decisions because you actually have thought about it, and not because, you know, your friend said it would be cool or whatever, and owning up to something that you may or may not have done.
Yeah. And
one of the lessons that I tried to share that I, you know, kind of shared with them was, I think one of them had something that she had to do for school, and she'd said, yeah, I'm going to do it, and she hadn't done it. And so there were consequences, and we couldn't go and do something that we would have done. Yeah. And what I'd said is that, look, I say I'm going to do something, and sometimes I don't feel like it. It doesn't happen. And that day, I was going to do laundry, and I came back from volunteering at school, and I was shattered. Yeah. And so I was like, I didn't do anything. And I said, I would have been okay if you had come up to me and said, you know what, Auntie Lara, I know I said I was going to do this, but I actually didn't do it. Because I just assumed it was done because, she hadn't told me. And what I said is that things change, feelings, how you feel in a moment changes. And I wouldn't have minded if you'd come up to me and said, I didn't, get this done, but I will do it then, tomorrow, whatever it is, and just told me. Yeah. Because I would have understood. But not telling me, isn't great. And so when I explained the why, and because then I sort of took it further, and I was like, I really want you to understand that you have the choice about everything you do, and obviously within a framework and according to age and everything. But I was like, I want you to sort of make your choices by thinking about what you want to do and what you think the right thing to do is, and then come to me.
Yeah, that sounds a great way to approach them. Yeah.
Well, I've been thinking about this stuff for ages. Yeah. It's like I love kids, and I think about how would I want to receive information in the way that you're you're thinking about it, and I try and sort of formulate.
I think
what I would do in that way, but that's because I see relationships as that they're all the same. They have the same core principles of listening and saying you're sorry if you do something wrong, and being kind, and we all have moments where we don't act in our highest in a higher self, but that's part of being human, and what goes along with that is that actually I think I was wrong, and I'm sorry, and I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah, and that whole kind of why stuff happens is good, I think, and there's a sort of probably a generational shift. Do you remember did you ever see the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes?
No.
Or Dennis the Menace?
Dennis the Menace.
This was
in Beano. Dennis the Menace was in Beano.
Not Dennis the Menace. There was another guy. There was a trope that came up when we were kids, a lot of the time, which was the parents would say because. So in Calvin and Hobbes, the comic, he says, "Oh, can I get an ice cream after we finish the shopping?" And Dad goes, "No." And Calvin says, "Why?" And Dad says, "Because."
Because what?
And Calvin says, "Because." Why is it parents always say because?
I mean, because full stop.
Yeah.
Well, that's the implicit is because I said so.
Because,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think probably what's happened is there's a sort of generational shift. So what you're talking about is for our parents' generation, and this isn't entirely true, because I actually think my parents were pretty good. They spent a lot of time explaining stuff to me, and I felt like I was very lucky. I had a great relationship with them and still do, but I think probably people weren't conscious of that allowing people to understand what was happening to them, so that they could understand their emotions. So as they grow up, they have an idea of what's happening inside of them, and they have a sense of who they are, and when these things fire up, why they're happening, and how to manage them and soothe themselves if it's bad, and encourage it if it's positive. And that whole because thing I think is a lot less prevalent than it used to be. But sometimes as a parent, you do just want to say because. I will put my hands up and say that. Because you just think, I don't need to explain this to you. This is what needs to happen.
Or I've already explained it.
Yeah. I mean, that's another one. We've been here before.
Yeah. Or I've explained it and I've told you why. Because sometimes, what I also sort of realised is that actually sometimes you can explain 3-4 times, and then you just have to then draw the line.
Yeah.
And it's like I remember having this too, where one of them at the performing arts school, we'd gone I think for the first day, and then a few kids were reading books at lunchtime. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you've got your head buried in a book, like when you've got your head buried in a phone, it shuts off connection, right? And the point about being at camp is getting to know different people and getting to, build relationships and have a shared experience together where you feel connected. And so one of the discussions that we had was that one of them wanted to take a book.
Right.
And I said no.
Okay.
And we, this was not an easy thing. It was easy for me because I said no. And I explained why.
Yeah.
But it was
But they might not necessarily
understand
get that explanation for them. I don't feel that though. I feel like I'm nervous. I don't want to meet people. So I guess then you have to try and say, well, okay, I understand. So you say, well, why is it you want to take the book? And understand
well, we went through I didn't just say no straight away. We had a whole discussion about it.
Exactly.
And she explained and I explained and whatever. And at the end of the day, it was no. And then a funny thing happened, which was because she didn't take the book, she ended up connecting with somebody and they became best friends for that week.
Great, there we go.
And they were looking out for the younger children. And so, I tried very hard to not say I told you so. I definitely was my best self. I didn't utter those words, but I did say, what do you think that you and she would have become so close today and you would have felt that if you had been reading? Like, do you think that? I just wanted to know, because if the answer was, I still think that, then I would have been like, okay, then take a book tomorrow, let's try it your way.
Yeah, sure.
But she actually said, no, I see. I said, so now do you
How old
see? She was 12 then.
Oh, okay, yeah, so she's pretty wised up.
Yeah.
For that.
And so, it was actually a nice way for, I guess, her to also kind of see that, okay, there might be in the moment, sometimes I don't understand, but there's a reason. And actually, because that's what I said. I said, this works the same for adults as it does for children.
Well, it's trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got to build up a trust with your kids that what you're saying is worth listening to. Yeah. And so you shall obey your parents. If it's just that and it hasn't got any sort of depth to it, then it's not.
I think that's the generational shift. I think.
Yeah, I think
because
so.
Before in the generation before us, I think it was very much you should obey your parents, by and large, right? And I think that, and this is where, guys, I think social media is amazing because I really think it's how you use it. There's so much access to information out there, and if you're looking or if you're curious or you just you Google, anything about parenting style, there's just so much that you can learn from people.
There is
and I think it's about not following any one person blindly because they're that one person. I think it's important, no matter who somebody is, when you're getting information or getting advice, it's important to let that filter through your brain and your situation and your way of dealing with things, and then you take the bits that are good and you leave out bits that don't work. And if you're not sure about how it's going to work, you can test it out and you can kind of see, well let me see if I allow, rather than insisting on XYZ, I give a little bit of freedom. Because what I've also realized, and not being a parent but from being a leader like at work, is that when you give some of the people that you're responsible for some latitude, you give them some trust, and you give them room to grow, they always step up into it.
Yeah, I think.
And when they don't, there might be other reasons, and that's where curiosity comes in, of like, okay, what's the actual issue? Because sometimes you might think that there's an issue, but you might, without talking to the other person, you might, and in this case a child, you might really not understand what the issue actually is. So, where were we? Parenting styles. So I want to ask you about a particular situation, because this is an example from one of my friends, and I don't know whether this is a new thing. Is co-sleeping a new thing of our generation? Or did it happen in our parents' generation?
I don't know. I think probably it happens more now, but it did happen with some people in the past, probably.
Okay, I mean, I don't know that much about it, but basically, I know it's where the child sleeps in bed with you until a particular age, and I don't even know what the particular age is. But what happens, like when we were talking about parenting styles, sometimes there's situations where you can compromise on, right? And you can bring your imprinting and views, and the other person brings theirs, and then you find a workable compromise that you're both happy with.
Yeah.
But in a situation where you have co-sleeping, and one parent then decides, you know what, I think this is the right time for the child to now move into their own room, sleep independently, because they feel that that's important for the child's development, as well as they actually don't like the situation anymore, right? And the other person doesn't want to. Well, that isn't really a compromisable situation, because you have to sort of...
There's always a compromise. I mean, firstly...
How do you deal with that?
Eventually, your child is too big to be in your bed. I mean, they are, and also...
No, I mean, there are king-size beds in America. They're massive.
There are big beds,
they fit 3 adults.
You know what? It doesn't matter how small a child is. They can take up an infinite amount of space in a bed. It's astonishing. Yeah. I remember ours would climb into bed with us when they were younger, sometimes in the morning, whatever, sometimes drop back to sleep, whatever. Occasionally, if they were unwell, they might sleep in the bed, or sometimes occasionally in an evening, if they needed more kind of comfort and attention, they might sleep in the bed. And any nights that they did sleep in the bed, you'd always be like, where's all the space gone? Why am I literally hanging over the edge of the bed here?
Did you get kicked in the head?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's really? That whole, 3 in the bed and the little one said roll over. It really is. The little one's just like kicks you all out, and you're all
and like... kids have an ability to turn, right? They turn when they're sleeping.
It's amazing. And they make a lot of noise as well. So I think probably, I mean, that's just... I don't know, because I don't think we did co-sleeping. I'm not 100% sure what co-sleeping is.
Well, co-sleeping is that the child...
They stay in the bed for longer than just they would ordinarily.
And not in these exceptional circumstances like when they're ill or in the morning or whatever. They actually sleep with you until whatever an age is. Yeah. So like, regardless of the age, in that situation where one parent wants to move the child into the room and the other parent doesn't...
Well, it's not. Is it? I guess in a way, the question for me there is about like, is it the parent's choice or is it the child's choice? The child. You should be speaking to the child. You should be saying, I don't know how old in this example the child is, but if the child is older than 5 or 6, that's a conversation you can probably have with them, and say, do you want to be in your own room? Would you like to? That'd be fun. You'd be a big boy. You'd be a big girl now. And then if there's a parent that wants the child to stay in the bed, well, that's got to be a question of like, well, why do you want the child to stay in the bed with you? What is it that you're afraid of giving up? Why do you not want to move on to the next stage? Because inevitably the child has to leave the bed.
Okay.
So it's like, it's difficult because so many of these situations are going to be down to all that stuff that we talked about that's inside of people, that is kind of their own triggers and their own sort of map, if you like, of how they feel about themselves. And you play out a lot of that with your kids and how you parent them. So someone who doesn't want their child to leave the bed will have something in them that has a need for the child to stay there, I would think. And how do you then reflect upon yourself and make that choice? There may be a school of thought out there that I'm not aware of that says a child should stay in bed with its parents for a longer period of time, and there probably are cultures that do it that we don't know. I don't know about now. So that may be where that parent's coming from. It may be just they may have read something and that really resonated with them, and they've gone, a child needs to be in bed with its parent till it's 10. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a pretty tricky one if you want to have more than one kid for a start.
Yeah.
So, and I have met people along the way whose children weren't able to leave the room, and generally, that, I think, culturally we accept that as a sort of maybe not the most positive experience for a child. But it's,
I think, like,
they do need to move on. They do need to have their own space.
Self-actualizing.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
Need to start taking responsibility for themselves. And part of, I think, I did a lifebook course in February, March.
What's a life?
So with Mind Valley. So Mind Valley have a course called Life Book, where you examine 12 areas of your life.
Okay.
I can't remember. Intellectual life, social life, emotional life, parenting, love, financial, career, a whole bunch of stuff, right? And so with parenting, I did the module. I thought it was important to do the module, even though I'm not a parent yet, because I wanted to examine what were my beliefs, what do I feel, what's my vision and everything. And the course is run by John and Missy Butcher, and so they talk about how, with all of these areas actually in our lives, sometimes we have certain beliefs that govern how we then act, and we don't even realize our beliefs.
Yeah, right.
And so their belief was that they want to raise happy, healthy, independent children. And I think independence is a huge part. And I sort of took that on as well. And I thought that's what I would want.
Yeah, sure.
As a parent, I want to raise independent children, an independent child who can start thinking for themselves and who can start making decisions and being able to communicate why they've come to a particular thing. Because I feel like if you give a child the tools to help them in one situation, that situation will then, you extrapolate, and it will take them through their life.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like setting them up for becoming, bigger humans, essentially. And so independence is a really big deal for a child, because that's how they start to, I guess, discover themselves.
The whole of life as a child is steps of independence.
Yes.
Talking is independence, walking is independence, crawling. First time you can cycle on your own, where
I remember that.
God,
I remember my dad.
I remember that. We all remember that moment.
Letting me go, and me going, "Are you holding? Are you holding?" And he was like, "Yes, I'm holding." And then I looked around, and he wasn't holding, and that's when I fell. But I cycled.
And that is universal.
Independently.
And that feeling that you're going through now.
Yeah.
I have that feeling when you say it. I go, I had that feeling.
Yeah.
And then I know my children have the same feeling, and I was there when I saw it. And then I know everybody who can ride a bike has had that feeling, and that's a really good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that
because I think it gives you the message. Oh, I can actually
do things
this
for myself.
I can do this for myself.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge thing that across the board you want your kids to learn. First time they walk to school on their own, when they move up to secondary school, it's interesting when you raise kids in London, you sort of think, oh my goodness, how are they ever going to have independence? Because it's like a minefield out there.
Yeah,
because if you pick up the Evening Standard, read the news, you're like, oh
no, James, that's what I don't.
It's murder on the streets.
I don't read the news because I cannot have an influx of negativity.
Yeah,
and that's been proven scientifically. That the ratio of negative to positive is absolutely ridiculous, and it's not representative of life. So it's like we're being fed a lot of the negative stuff.
Do you remember they tried to do that thing on ITV News once where they put like a nice news item at the end? Do you remember that?
No. I probably wasn't watching the news.
And in other news, you won't watch it. Yeah. And in other news, and they would do something like, Innervating in Gloucestershire this week, a lamb was walked through a nice pasture by a young child, and everybody was happy. And
what happened?
But that was the news. You see, what you're like, what?
No. What happened as an effect of that? Did people write in and complain and go?
No, well, it didn't last because no one's interested.
I bet they should try that again, because I bet you people would be now. We need
the good news.
There's magazines. Happyful is like one of positive news.
Right.
And it's important,
but
about
it doesn't
curating your mind.
I totally agree, and I think you have to kind of look after yourself in the right way, don't you? But somehow it doesn't have that mass kind of appeal, does it? Good news in the way that bad news does.
Because our brains are wired to immediately spot the negative and look for the negative, and that's why you have to consciously be recognizing that our brains are wired for that. You have to consciously then take that in and then give it something a bit more healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a hour by hour practice, and it's not something that you go, all right, I've figured out how to do this, I'm done now for the rest of my life. It's like, no, it's like now you do it, you kind of have to keep doing
it. So avoiding the newspapers one way you do it, which is quite a cool idea, I've got to say.
I don't watch the news at all, and I figure that if there's something big,
you'll find out.
I'll find out.
Yeah.
And I'll generally find out because now people post about really big things that happen, and I kind of see,
yeah.
oh, so and so has died or whatever, you know.
Because I'm a bit addicted to the news. I'm a bit addicted to my Guardian app, and I do know that when I switch it off, I feel better. And I do know, like when I go on holiday, for example,
and you're not
and then I'll be off of that. I'll be onto a novel and all of that. I know it's I'm much happier, much more relaxed.
3 years ago, I read 30 books, and I was reading on the tube to work and back from work. So that was 40 minutes, 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. And I remember noticing how much my mood had shifted.
Yeah.
And then I moved to a different job, and I didn't do that because I was literally on my phone the whole time, dealing with things, getting rid of things before I got into work. Yeah. So I could have like got people on their way doing what needed to be done, or giving this answer or that answer, or setting something up. And I remember it had a significant effect on me.
Yeah, that will.
But parenting in London of teenagers.
So you kind of think like, there's no way they can ever be allowed out.
Okay.
It's dangerous out there. Because also, when they're small, they're little, they're just, you're with them the whole time. You're always looking after them, and they're not independent in that way. And you want to protect them, and you want the best for them. But as they start getting older,
start teaching them parameters.
Yeah, and they have to roam, and they have to, and there's like been quite a lot of sort of talk about it in recent years, but they have to learn about risk as well.
Yeah.
And you can't, as a parent, be totally risk averse. You have to gauge risk.
What kind of risk?
I things like what sort of people are they going to be with, what sort of behaviour is going to be there. Obviously, there's like the risks in, well, it's not just London, anywhere now.
Anywhere.
But yeah, there's a risk of knife or gun crime, that sort of thing. But then those things like that always existed anyway. There could be, when I was a kid, there could have been a fight, you know?
Yeah.
So those things have always existed.
Again, we're finding out a lot more about them now because they're the things being reported.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like I'm really aware now of coach crashes. I went on coaches on like many school trips, never thought about it at all. And now all you hear, and now I'm like, oh God, a coach journey, you know? But
it's like when you buy a new car, isn't it? You know, if you buy a new car, so we bought a Nissan, a Prius, Toyota Prius, and then suddenly I know there are a lot. The reality is there are a lot of them, but I don't think I'd realised how many there were until I had one. And then when I had one, I was like, oh my God, every other car is a Prius. That's that thing, isn't it? If something's at the front of your mind,
that's again, it's then, I think I don't know whether I'm giving the right language, the reticular activating system. Maybe I'm talking bollocks.
It sounds great.
It sounds great. I should have just gone with that, and then, you know, people could have like in the comments could have put, no, that's not the right bit of the brain that does this. But yeah, it's like if you're pregnant, you see pregnant people.
Yeah, massively.
My friend bought a Fiat, I don't know how to say it, Cinquecento or whatever, and it's an electric car. All I see is that now. Yeah. And it's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, you are more predisposed.
You do, yeah, you spot them. We're pattern recognition, because that's where we come from, because we in, you know, you go back to the jungle, the pattern is, where's the fruit, there's the fruit, okay, boom, I'm on it.
High trees have fruit, or you know, like that.
Pattern recognition, danger, here comes, I hear that sound, that's danger, that's
the
wolves,
adrenaline,
whatever.
So there's the things that were there when we were younger, which is, you know, the thing, you know, that your friends and avoiding this or that, whatever. But how do you deal with social media? Because we are coming at social media with having grown up in an age where there wasn't. So we've come to it as an adult, and we can recognise, I personally think that, you know, we have that ability to recognise, okay, maybe I shouldn't post that. Maybe that's like a little bit, like that's going to stay with me. Like that's, you know, like I don't think I want to put that out there. So we have consciousness and we can make a judgment. Whereas kids that have grown up with that, and it's so prevalent in schools. I mean, my friend told me about in the States that there are parties called exclusion parties in high school. I think it's high school, or maybe it starts as young as middle school, but where kids will exclude one person, have the party, post about it on Instagram to show the I mean, it's so just.
Wow, that's brutal.
It's so awful.
That's brutal.
Right?
Why would you do that? I mean, bullying's always existed, so I
Bullying's-
guess it's
bullying's
just going to
always
become more
existed,
complicated.
But it's more complicated because now it affects you in the privacy of your home.
Yeah,
With
that's what they do say, isn't it?
With social media.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm thinking about it particularly in terms of how do you use it responsibly, and how do you sort of teach them trust and trusting people, but also the converse, which is that people can be who they are, you know, like catfishing, and how people could, you know, misrepresent themselves, and how much of your life do you want to be open, and I don't know. There's so many.
It's interesting. One thing I can touch on there that I know, because we've sort of tried a few different things to encourage a balanced life with social media. So one of the things that we did for a while, and actually we've stopped doing now, but was very effective. We did something called Media Free Monday, where on a Monday, just there's no telly, there's no games, there's no phones. We all try and switch it off.
All of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we try and do it as well. So we did it for a while, and I really have to say, I don't know why we've stopped actually, because it was good. But you'd kind of say goodnight to each other, and you feel really connected to each other.
And so what would you replace it with? Would you do stuff together? Would you play a game
Sometimes
as a
do
family?
stuff together.
Would you have dinner together?
Yeah, we'd have dinner together, and then sometimes, like, I'm the board game bore in our family.
I love board games.
I'm the one,
Oh,
and everyone's
I
like,
can't
"Oh
play board games,
God, Dad, not another board game! Can't believe you want to do it." But I want to play board games.
Okay.
I love it. I think it's a real actor thing. Actors just love board games. They're just like, we're going to play a game.
Yeah, I really love.
Yeah.
I love games.
Or cards. You know, we do a bit of cards.
I do that with my parents at Christmas.
So there would be a bit of that. Or sometimes it was just, you know, people would sit and read and sit around. We weren't always necessarily with each other for the whole of the evening, but you would say goodnight and you would be more connected. There's no doubt about it. So that for a while worked. Like I'm saying, we don't do it now. I can't remember the kids hated it because I guess they just want to be on the screens. Is the fact of the matter. The reality is, I think managing screens is probably. My dad says this to me. He says, "I don't envy you having to manage that aspect."
Well, it's
of your
the
life.
source, I think,
the
of the most arguments between siblings. Because when I volunteered at primary school last year, and I taught sort of a series to year 5 about how words matter, and it was, you know, words we say to other people. That was the first lesson, and then we sort of recapped for the second one, and then we went on to words we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
As I introduced the concept of self-talk, which I only even discovered 6 years ago. So I was like blown away as an adult, and so I wanted to introduce it to 10-year-olds early, so they realise, you know, when they feel something, it's because they've had a thought, and like, oh, I'm really crap at maths. And it's like, and then they feel like really crappy.
And then the exam comes up and they're not in a good place,
and that's what they're telling themselves, and you know, the fixed versus growth mindset, etc. And when the kids reported back, 'cause they were really keen in the second lesson to be, you know, saying, you know, well, I, you know, argue with my sister about screens. Always, like 90% of the arguments were about screens, fighting over iPads and things. And it was like, and I was going to say this, but then I decided not to. I thought about what we talked about.
That's
I said
good.
not to.
Great.
And it just made my day.
Yeah, I bet.
But I was thinking, God, like kids are fighting. Like you can manage screen time in whatever way.
Yeah,
you know.
even that's difficult because the way stuff's built now. Like there's this game Fortnite, and there's other games like it, and it's
quite violent. I've heard they're like quite violent games.
Yeah, they're shoot 'em ups. Yeah. And they're also kind of like world games, so they're like world building games. So they are fantastic in that children get to explore, and they also get to play it with friends, so they get to communicate with friends while they're playing. So there's a lot of really good stuff in there. But it's built in to be addictive.
Yes.
Is all it is.
Yeah.
So what will happen is you'll say, okay, dinner's in 5 minutes. You get off in 5 minutes. Back in the day, I guess you'd be playing a game and you knew the game was so,
and it
you
wasn't
could just
so
stop
highly
it.
addictive.
Yeah, or you could pause it, or
yeah.
And now you say, okay, it's 2 minutes, and they go, I can't stop, and you're like, well, we're having dinner. No, and it can put them in a very sort of like heightened, adrenalized state of being. So the kind of the warning times thing is the thing that
the countdown
we've found helps.
Okay.
And then just to have like a set to say, look, so now, for example, PlayStation, our kids can only play it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's actually probably too much. They're allowed 2 hours.
So you're limiting time period. And what about social media accounts?
Well, then that's like only the eldest has got that. Sam, he's 15, and he didn't have them till he was 13, and I would say he's probably, I get a sense, he likes being on there. He goes on Instagram a lot, and
Instagram has replaced Facebook.
Yeah.
Even my
Kids
cousin told me,
Facebook.
Only people of your age are on Facebook, and I'm like, I like Facebook because there's words, like you can write, words and share things.
I don't really do it much anymore myself, but he'll sit on Instagram because I think he just likes watching little videos or
IGTV
comedy sketches or photos and stuff. But I don't think he posts a lot.
But so your thing was 13. 13 is the age. That
13 or 14. It's when they went to second. We tried to hold off giving them a smartphone for as long as possible, because that's not great. Full stop. Because it's just another reason to watch YouTube.
Yeah.
So I think he had.
YouTube is not bad. We're going to be on YouTube, James.
Of course, YouTube is really great. Yeah.
Look, it's not the thing itself; it's how you use it, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But but having the phone there just means that you're more likely to be playing those little games that are like, I don't know, Crossy Road or whatever, which are great. But it's just they all just fill the gaps.
Yeah.
And I the thing is, it's kids, but it's for us as well.
It's definitely.
I really am trying, and I do it occasionally, and I'll be like, I'm not going to just go on my phone as a reflex. Like, you go back 20 years, and the reflex was get out a cigarette. Like that, waiting for the bus.
And now it's the phone.
Now it's get out the phone. And we now look back at that reflex of getting out a cigarette and go, it's not a great idea. So maybe...
Well, I mean, people are already saying that now. Jay Shetty, like lots of people I watch, and they talk about being conscious. Simon Sinek talks a lot about connection as well, and I...
Look at the world around you.
Yeah.
Stare out the train window. Yeah. I saw something
That's when you have thoughts as well.
Oh my God, something devastating. Like when you see... a mum with a beautiful child, and the child is like this, and she's just on the phone, and that is properly upsetting, because you just
Dad too, any parent.
But I'm thinking of a thing that I saw a few weeks ago, and I just remember thinking, I'm just gutted to see that. I've done it,
But that happens even like at home, right?
Sure.
It's not just it's.
But
it's about.
Here's the thing. I think you really, really have to say you are more important than my phone. And
kids. I've actually read that kids feel that.
Yeah.
They actually feel that the act of taking your phone, for a parent doing that in front of a child, and actually episode 6, which came out a week and a half ago, was about connection, and Emily, who was on there, said that Public Health England had produced research which said that children's language skills are developing a lot later because they don't interact with parents, and even when you have educational games and everything, it's not a replacement for that interaction of cross ages interaction, and just the amount that kids pick up just by hearing and witnessing, and where you're not consciously setting out to teach them, but they're just absorbing from the world around you. You need to. That's how
they're wonderful, extraordinary,
sponges,
powerful
little sponges.
And if you take away the opportunity for them to do all that, then they will. I have a thing actually where I'm a bit embarrassed about my phone at home.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. It's just sort of like it's just got to me now. So if I'm sat there on my phone and I'll be down in the kitchen and I'll be doing something and I'll be, I don't know, just going on the Guardian app most likely.
Yeah.
And then I hear footsteps on the stairs. I'll be like, I'll put it away.
Because you're trying to model.
It's
not being constantly
but
addicted.
it's almost like got into me now, where I'm actually at the point where I'm embarrassed if they catch me on my phone. Oh. I feel like I've made a mistake. Like I don't know if I've sort of built this into my thinking, but it's so I will really consciously try and put it away. And there is never I will not
I think
I will not be on the
consciousness
phone.
versus embarrassment, like it's more that you're conscious
Yeah.
and you want to be present.
But it sort of almost plays out of me now as
Yeah.
a feeling of embarrassment.
Yeah.
I feel ashamed of myself.
Because you've made a decision
Yeah.
about how you want to be, and so when you suddenly do that, it's like going against it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want them to see me on the phone. So what they're doing is when a child comes to you and they've got a question, or when a partner or a friend or anyone comes to you and they've got a question for you, or they want to tell you something, I think I was reading a book recently where they call it a bid. So they're making a bid. Okay. And if you were to ask me something and you make a bid, and then I just carry on doing this, then I haven't responded to your bid. Yeah? Okay. So so I haven't responded to it, and we need to feel most of our bids are responded to, because we need to feel heard and seen and all of that,
valued and appreciated.
If I'm still on this, I haven't responded, I haven't answered your bid.
And what that then tells you, for any person, right, child or adult, is that you sort of, it'll probably make you think twice before going again.
Twice before thinking again, absolutely. Because I'm not worth it. Yeah. So self-esteem goes down, and there's a sort of some statistic or other by the field study that someone did, which was something to do with partners, and they can tell whether partners will stay together.
John Gottman.
Is it?
Yeah. John Gottman can predict with over 90% accuracy.
And it's a lot to do with the bids that you make.
Yes.
And it's something
kindness, about how couples, he can predict with 90%. For those of you who haven't, who don't know about this, he predicted with over 90% accuracy whether a couple would be together in 10 years, and it was based on kindness that they showed each other, and that kind of thing. So you have somebody makes a face or like oh god,
or ignores it. So if you get less than 7 out of 10 successful bids, it's looking bad.
And in the case of relationships, like you need to decide whether you want to stay in a relationship. You need to sort of be having 5 positive interactions for every one
because
negative.
the one is so powerful.
Yeah.
One is way more powerful than the negative. But another way, sometimes those you can make the bid of like, I had a really bad day at work.
Yeah.
And what you need from that is, tell me about it.
Yes.
God, that does sound bad.
Yeah.
But if it's I had a bad day at work and then the response is
nothing.
You shouldn't feel bad.
Oh,
you shouldn't feel bad.
You should.
You shouldn't feel bad.
It's the whole other show, James, is should.
Yeah. So that is like a bid not being responded to, although apparently it might be. Like, so they are interacting, but they're not actually allowing you to do the thing which you want to do. So it's the kids have exactly the same thing.
So we are now very much over time.
Oh, are we?
We are. I could literally talk to you forever about this.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Well, how?
So, just to bring this to a close.
Yeah.
Can you sum up in one sentence what you want most for your children? Like what? Only one sentence.
One sentence.
Yeah.
The thing I always say to my kids, and the thing that I think matters to me most, is that they have a passion in their life, and they find a passion. And I think that comes about through all these things we've talked about. Passion will come about through independence, and through feeling that they are heard and seen. And then they will find something they're passionate about. And if you can find something you're passionate about in your life, then you will always be occupied. And you might not always be happy, but that's not reality, is it?
No,
but you will always feel like you have a purpose, and you will often be happy, and life will have a sense of meaning to you. So that's, for me, I've always said that to my kids: find a passion.
So for the kids that I love and are in my life, and hopefully my future children, I would want them to really know themselves and discover who they are and have fun doing it, so that when you know yourself, then it just helps you in all aspects of your life. It helps you in who you want to be. It helps you in how you make decisions. It helps you in what you might end up doing. And in terms of my relationship with them, I told my niece this, you can tell me anything. There is never going to be anything that you can ever tell me that's going to make me not love you.
That's good.
And I want the children in my life to feel like I am a safe harbor where they can come and talk to me about anything, and I will, hear them and be able to have a dialogue and a communication. So yeah. This has been a joy. I want to do this again. We're going to have to think of a different topic. Thank you so much.
That's all right.
It means so much to me.
Thanks, Lara.
So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed that. I know this is a long one, but clearly parenting, I mean, there's a lot to say, and it's so much also about who we are. So we'd love to hear your comments, and I would really love it if you enjoyed this. If you enjoy other episodes, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is now in my name. I'm very excited about this. So anyway, take care, guys, and see you in the next episode.